I want to now introduce Stacy Bresler, Managing Partner at Archer Energy Solutions, who will discuss ICS security decisions. I guess my voice is getting rusty from not talking. Stacy, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Lou. And we'll jump in this relatively quickly. But first, I want to say that this presentation is condensed, so I tried to do my best in order to capture all the thoughts and everything. So bear with me while I walk through this. This is usually about an hour presentation, but we'll get through this. But ultimately, the goal here is to talk about a risk-first approach to thinking about ICS security. And it kind of plays into compliance as well, operations, and general cybersecurity. So I'll get into that. If you go to the next slide, please. Had to show the obligatory balance here. So we know in the electric sector that everything we do sits on this kind of three-way balance. We have operations, which is the reliability side of things. We have security. We have a ton of regulations and compliance. And when one of those tilts in a certain way, the other two kind of feel it, right? Security teams push for more control, so it balances that way. Operations is guarding their uptime, and so it balances that way. We got compliance worries about interpretations and audit evidence. So all of them are battling at the same time, and none of them are wrong. But when we move without alignment, we create this friction instead of progress. Most programs still live in a cycle of reaction. A new requirement drops. We see that all the time. A breach hits the news and suddenly we're focused on that colonial pipeline issue. Or a vendor or demo dazzles your leadership and you're off onto another focus area. And we pivot before asking some of the most important questions. And one of the most important questions is, what could actually go wrong here and how would it affect reliability? That's the heart of a risk-first mindset in our industry. It isn't about anti-compliance. It's not about anti-technology. It's pro-understanding. When we anchor every decision to operational risks, those three forces, security, reliability, and compliance, they finally start working together instead of fighting for attention. Go to the next slide, please. I think we went a couple too far there. There we go. Thank you. So this is about the checklists that we live in. Checklists feel safe, and they're everywhere for us. They give us these boundaries, these milestones, and they satisfy this sense of completion. But they're also very deceptive. I've walked into electric utilities as an auditor where every policy was signed, every procedure was dated, every audit file immaculate, all those checklists that are associated with that were perfect. And yet, when I peeled the onion back just a little bit, the patch records showed systems that are months behind. We have change logs that were contradicting network diagrams. The compliance story looked fantastic, but the operational story did not. That disconnect, it happens when the checklist becomes the goal. We end up maintaining documents instead of defenses. So risk-first thinking flips that order. It starts with consequences. If a control fails, what happens? Who's affected? How fast could the impact spread? Once you can answer those type of questions, the checklists, they stop becoming this burden and they start becoming a receipt, evidence that real risk was addressed. Compliance becomes the byproduct, not the purpose. Go to the next slide, please. So this is kind of a discussion about reflection and reactions. We want to go from reaction to reflection, and our industry runs on this adrenaline. We get those new directives, we get the new orders, the advisories, alerts. They keep everyone super busy, but constant reaction creates this fatigue, and fatigue breeds inconsistency. Risk-first programs, they inject reflection into that cycle. After every event or audit, they ask, what vulnerability did this expose? Does that condition exist anywhere else? Did our controls behave as expected? That pause, that turns compliance reviews into reliability reviews. And over time, reflection builds foresight. Instead of racing from crisis to crisis, the organization starts predicting where stress will appear next and fixing it before it becomes tomorrow's headline. Next slide. So risk first thinking, and kind of wanted to get into this. It's not just a slogan, it's a discipline. It starts with identifying what truly matters, the assets, the processes that keep power flowing. Next, we got to look at how those assets could fail or be misused. And then we get to measure consequence, not just in technical terms, but in reliability terms, outage minutes, operational disruptions, safety exposures. Only after we do that do we start selecting these controls or internal controls that we're all talking about today. Not the loudest technology or the newest acronym, but the safeguards that most directly reduce the consequences. And finally, we do the validation, right? Continuously, not annually. I know we have a lot of requirements, say annually, quarterly, 15 months and such, but continuously evaluating and validating your state. Because every time your organization evolves or the grid evolves, so does the risk surface. So we can't wait for a year. We can't wait for a quarter sometimes. We have to do this continuously. And that loop is how compliance evidence also stays relevant and how leadership gains that confidence that our defenses match our realities. Next slide. I want to try to bring this to some of the more recent things relevant to our sector, and that a lot of that's about compliance, but visibility is a big one. And visibility is everything from my perspective, but only when it's purposeful. The push for internal network monitoring, for example, under SIP 15, that shows this perfectly. On its surface, it's about sensors, packet captures, whatever you need to get that visibility. In truth, it's about understanding behavior inside critical zones. A risk-first approach in this regard would begin asking, what decisions will this data help us make? What anomalies threaten reliability versus routine operations? Who's going to interpret these alerts, and what authority will they have to act? This goes beyond just the compliance requirements explicitly. It's taking a compliance element and making it a reality for your organization that you gain benefit from. Without asking those questions, the monitoring is just going to become noise. And with them, with those particular data points, it becomes intelligence. We don't need more dashboards, in my opinion, again. We need better context, the kind that turns compliance data into operational foresight. Next slide. So there's some hidden connections that we all know about. So every system, they have some kind of diagram that doesn't capture everything. You know, maybe it's a forgotten maintenance laptop or a vendor API system or a file share that was created that just for testing that we never turned off. But that's very common. And I remember once at a utility where I discovered that there was a turbine vendor's analytics platform. It was replicating control data to a third-party cloud each night. It wasn't malicious. It just wasn't documented. It was nowhere to be found, but we found it in reality. But it created a new reliability dependency overnight. We didn't know it was there, and now we did. So what do we do with it? That visibility gave us the opportunity to correct. So risk first visibility, it's about surfacing those connections early before they become audit findings or operational surprises. The goal isn't isolation here. It's intentional connectivity. When I'm talking about these diagrams, when you know what data leaves, where it goes, and how it's protected, you can control your risk instead of discovering it by accident. Next slide. And just a word of caution here about living off the land. This is a term where, in essence, the attackers, they don't need to create any custom malware to cause damage. They use what's already in the environment, our tools, our credentials, our trusts that we have established. They know this. They have access to all these same things, and they're living off the land, per se, in order to use attacks against our organization. In one case, a configuration software was used to make unauthorized connections and changes during routine maintenance hours. Found this during an audit. Every log said success because the system's perspective, that's what it thought. Nothing was wrong, but only on a cross-discipline review, security and operations working together, we noticed that the timing and context didn't fit. That discovery wasn't luck, it was a mindset. We were looking at it from a risk perspective, not just a checkbox that we had to collect data. And the data said success, but it didn't feel right. So we went deeper, and that was that risk-first capability. The risk-first detection focused less on signatures and more on logic. It asked while we were going through this, we were asking, does this make sense right now? That question revealed this invisibility. And we were using tools to do this, the same ones that their attackers are using, we used internally in order to discover a lot of this. Next slide. So turning data into decisions, this is really important because most organizations, as you know, we drown in data. We have so much going on, and we have this thirst for insight, logs, alerts, dashboards, all competing for some type of attention. If you have a risk-first program that imposes purpose, they tie every feed into a decision point. Instead of reporting 10,000 alerts reviewed, they tell leadership 3 of those could affect generation reliability, and here's what we did about them. That language builds credibility. It connects the SOC to system operators and turns technical noise into operational narratives. And when decision makers see how information translates to reliability, they stop viewing cybersecurity as a cost center and start seeing it as a reliability function. Next slide. So controls that count, and I got a weird little thing there, sorry about that. Controls are where theory meets this reality. They're how we provoke risk and how we manage that risk, or not provoke, I'm sorry, that's how we prove risk and how it's managed, but only if we've chosen the right reasons. A policy that no one follows is just security theater. A technology safeguard that prevents a known failure, that's assurance. Risk-first control design asks these 2 questions. What specific risk does this mitigate? How will we know it's working? If we can answer both of those, we have an effective control and a defensibility audit trail. The same documentation that satisfies compliance becomes the story of our security efficiencies, not just busy work. It's not evident, and it's now evidence for purpose. Go to the next slide, please. And this is the hardest part, culture. Technology can't fix culture, and culture, more than any other tool, determines where security actually works. Operators fear downtime, security fears exposure, compliance fears penalties. Those instincts are natural, but they can turn collaboration into conflict. And we've known this for years. We always talk about the IT-OT conflict. Well, this is where we have our chance to fix things. Risk-first culture starts by reframing the question from who owns the control to who owns the consequences. And once teams discuss consequence, outages, safety, trust, for example, alignment starts to follow, and everybody wants reliability. And when risk conversations use reliability as the common language, security stops feeling like interference and starts feeling like partnership. That shift alone, more than any product or policy, changes outcomes. Next slide, thank you. Compliance is often treated as the finish line, like we talked before, these checklists that we're trying to chase, something that we're racing towards, something that we don't want to forget until next year. But the best programs, they use a feedback loop. And every new standard from SIP 13, SIP 15, whatever, SIP 16 that's coming our way is a mirror of the industry's evolving risk landscape. If you read them that way, they stop becoming these boxes to check and start becoming lessons to apply. For example, we talked about SIP 15. It isn't about just installing more sensors or more capabilities of collecting data. It's about acknowledging that network visibility inside control centers directly impacts reliability. Throughout your organization, that visibility provides you insight whether or not the standard existed. So you want to use compliance to verify that your risk assumptions remain accurate. And in doing so, you're going to make compliance a measure of maturity, not an administrative chore. Next slide. So I went through this rather fast, a lot faster than I anticipated, so hopefully more questions. But in closing, I just wanted to kind of focus on this from guesswork to clarity theme that I've been talking about. Because to me, the grid is it's just too critical to defend on guesswork. And this is where the passion comes from, kind of like what Mike is talking about previously, about passion being such a key part to our industry and to those that are trying to be those grid defenders. So risk first thinking replaces that assumption with understanding. It kind of unites the security and compliance by making both serve the same master, which is reliability. And when we ask better questions about like monitoring or cloud connectivity or how systems truly behave, we're going to expose those hidden dependencies before they become those failures that we so dread. We design controls that matter if we think about risk first, and we gather evidence that proves why they matter. The real success metric isn't the number of requirements met, it's the number of surprises prevented. If there's one takeaway today that I want you to take from this is start every conversation with that single question: what could go wrong and how would it affect reliability? When you answer that question with confidence, security decisions become clearer, compliance becomes a lot easier, and reliability becomes stronger. And that's ICS security without the guesswork in a nutshell. And it's how we protect what truly keeps the lights on. And that's what I have to offer today, and open for any questions.
One question we've had come in says, I would like to see your full hour presentation. Is there a place I can do that?
I do believe I have a recording of that someplace. I will try to get it to you, Lou, so maybe we can share it with everyone.
We can include it with the slide deck when it's published.
Sounds good.
Do we have any other questions, Gabe?
I'm putting one in the chat that I just saw.
I just moved one over, Lou. Do you see?
Oh, okay. Let me see. This is the one that's, what are your thoughts on WFH for
Work from home.
cybersecurity?
I think that's work from home, Stacy.
Yeah, work from home. Yep, sorry, I just went ahead with it. So what are your thoughts about work from home for cybersecurity professionals? Can everything be defended remotely, or does it help to have on-site presence? What about customer services to learn the business needs versus locking everything down? Well, these are great risk questions. I mean, these are things that you have to ask about your organization, and I don't believe in a one-size-fits-all. There are pros and cons to every single one of those. From working from home, certain. There's secure ways of doing that. Is there a need for your organization, the way you're doing cybersecurity, how locked down it is in your organization, to have on-site presence for security professionals? That could be. So it's a matter of asking the right questions about your particular infrastructure and what your policies are in regard. Compliance leads us down those paths, but it's really the compliance standards that we live in the electric sector, especially for cybersecurity, are really the bare bones of security, and they provide you opportunities for securing your organization properly. They don't say no to anything. They say, here's the rules by which you have to abide by. And that gives you opportunity to build solutions that meet the compliance, but also meet your overall risk profile. See another one up here. Are there any other questions we should be asking from a reliability standpoint, and that were not currently asked in your view? Well, there's thousands of questions you can ask, and I believe some of the best questions you can get to ask about risk come from the NIST cybersecurity framework overall. If you look at the CSF, it is a great framework for identifying different key areas and important areas of cybersecurity that can lend to asking the right risk questions. They may be formulated in a way that are more direct. Do you have this? Do you have that? Versus asking, what's the impact of my organization? So I would take a lot of those questions that you find in the CSF and turn them into those consequence type of questions, asking yourself, what is the impact of reliability if I don't do this? What is the impact of reliability if I do it? That it could have a negative effect too. So I think that's probably the best place to find all the other questions. There's not one, there's not two, there's not 10. It just depends on where you're at in your maturity and what type of questions that are applicable to what you're trying to accomplish.